No, sir, I don't like it.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to No Sir Pod. It's the podcast where we talk about shit we don't like with people we adore. This week, no goddamn exception. Friend, author, comedian, a fucking label owner. I was going to say label maker.
Label maker.
JT Habersaat, ladies and gentlemen.
Label maker. I like that. Because that could imply like things you put on bottles and also just like, I think you're like just dubbing people things. You have Squire energy.
Yeah. I like horses.
Right, yes.
Hi, how are you? It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
It is good because we only ever see each other in passing.
Yes.
As a person who does stand up for a living out in the ether, as they say.
I think 30% of the time I'm home when you're in Austin and 30% of the time you're home when I'm in LA, and it works out.
It works out.
And the rest of the time you're like, I'm in Sarasota, and I'm like, I'm somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
One time that worked when you were recording your album, the most recent one in Gainesville, and then I was like, oh well, I'm close-ish to Gainesville, so then I'll come. And then oddly enough, another friend of mine was the one doing the audio for it. That's right. So Mike Merrifield.
Yeah,
so
Mike's
it's all
Gainesville, Florida, 2022. Late 2020, right before Omicron. That's all I remember. Because I was supposed to record for 800 Pound Gorilla April of 2020, and for some reason that didn't happen.
Wow, that's weird.
And then we kicked it down the can 2 years, and I'm like, because I had to record this special in Florida because I'm talking mad shit about Florida.
Right.
And then Omicron kicked in. I'm like, I'm flying there, doing the special, and fleeing immediately. That's what I did. I flew to Florida specifically for 24 hours to tape and get out.
And I'm glad I got to see you for that 24 hours.
Yeah, it was great. I was so happy that you were there. And then Brian Ziola was there. And I think Larry Fulford was there too, maybe.
I don't remember. Larry was out of town. Work. I think he had to work or something. But he was close-ish.
Yeah. Orlando-y.
Yeah. But it's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Thanks for carving.
But that's not. We're not here for pleasantries. We're here to talk about shit you don't like.
Right.
Which honestly is a lovely because you and I get very curmudgeon-y together.
Oh my God, do we?
Yeah, it's one of those things. Except when we get in the car, it's kind of how we still us.
Yes, it's how we bonded immediately. I think. Because I was trying to remember where we first was it Bird City Comedy Fest that we first met.
Maybe
in person. Like I knew of you via like Brett Erickson and that crew a little bit. Like they told me you like Carmen, but I can't remember if that was the first time we met in person.
I can't recall either. It was either there. It might have been in Chicago. It might have been. I'm not certain.
It's been a while.
But it might have been here when you came here once.
In LA?
Yeah, when Brett was still here. Brett and Carrie were still here. Brett
that
Erickson,
could have been
another
true.
comedian.
That could have been at the Comedy Store or something like that. Yeah, that might be.
That my origin story with a lot of people is always very gray because I don't remember. Turns out ether doesn't make you remember shit.
Alcohol. Well, harkening back to that. I don't want to label you here, but it was a different time. It was pre-COVID, pre-fentanyl. But that rooftop party at Bird City where the cops showed up and threw us all out. We just
pushed it into our hotel room.
Kristen lady, you and I it was.
We were also the only one not alarmed. We were like,
oh no, we were fine with it.
We're fine.
It's funny to see comedians freak out and scatter.
Yes.
When they're like, the fuzz is here. Oh no. And we're just like
it's not only that, but it was like it's a security guy. It's not the police.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were at a comedy festival and there was no after party, so we kind of made an after party. Me and Anthony Decimito we're sharing a hotel room.
That's
so
right, Anthony. My God.
Everybody came to our room to party, and then we didn't realize how big the party was going to get, so we were like, this is tight. Now, this feels like very high school.
Let's go on the roof.
Yeah, let's go outside because we had a door that went out to the roof and we went out there and partied. And so
surely no one will mind 40 comedians.
All trying to out yell each other.
Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. That was the the first time I remember really getting to hang with you.
Yeah.
So we probably met in passing before that.
But that's the same thing. It was one of those things where I knew we both known of each other. And then this was the time where we're like, okay, you're a real person.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember everybody else passed out like dead soldiers. And you and I were just up busting each other's balls.
Yeah.
Trying not to like shh, they're so sleeping and we're like till fucking 4 a.m. just jabber-jawing. Yeah, so it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in 7 years.
Friendship. Yay.
Yay.
So we got anything new you don't like? Anything maybe we haven't discussed?
I have classic favorites.
Okay.
But also I feel like these might just be old man gripes, but like the top of my list, which is a constant, are people that don't control their barking dogs. That infuriates me to a level that I can't completely explain.
With my fucking neurodivergent ass and having that's like what? Because listen, not to flex, but I just got back from out of the country, and there's so much more.
Oh,
beeping.
You need to be more specific than that.
No, I don't want the border control.
Have to,
I don't want the border control.
Out of the country.
I was in Spain, and and one thing very viscerally noticed: way less beeping, way less alarms, way less like. Dude.
Is that, but this is a real question though. Is that because I know people have gone to Cuba and they're like, dude, the cars there are from like the 70s and stuff.
Well, that's because they've ruined all the trade agreements with every goddamn country.
Right. Speaking of trade, this tariff thing, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But no, I'm curious if that's just like when I've gotten to Mexico and stuff too, like the cars are like a decade kind of behind. So you think it's like a technology thing hasn't caught up yet?
I don't know. I think it's just that
like
they
frown upon beeping.
They check the door to make sure it's locked. They don't have to have like even at the airport. It's just like there's a constant beeping every time I'm at a fucking airport.
I've never noticed that at LAX.
Beep 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 beep, beep. And it's just because somebody has a door propped open and the alarm is going off, and it makes me lose my fucking lizard mind. I can't stand it. I can't think. And so it was, but yes, a barking dog, especially a small, shrill barking dog. I can't, I like
the people that just like let it go. I can't get mad at the dog because it's just bad ownership. Right. But you should not own an animal if you can't. Either if you want to have it in your house barking nonstop, that's annoying, but okay. But if you're the type that just lets it out for a long time and just lets everyone in the neighborhood lose their mind, I really want to do violence to you. It really gets bad up here.
I do fantasize about snapping that dog's neck. I don't want to. I like dogs, but there's a certain pitch where if it hits that for too long, it's hitting it's like that old that torture thing where they drop water droplets on your forehead. And it's the same thing. It's just tapping a nail into the middle of my forehead to the point where I was just like, nothing but rage. That's all you get out of me.
Yes, because even then when it does stop, your mind is anticipating for it to start again. So you're like, I know you can't even rest when it's not happening.
I can't fucking stand it.
All right, we're off to a good start here. Just getting our rage in order. Yeah, I've never gotten to the point where I'm like, I want to strangle the dog, but I have thought about like Benadryl.
Oh yeah,
I'm like, maybe I'll just give you some nice turkey.
Again, I would never act on it, but it's just watching. It's just it goes to like it. I get so mad because the sound won't stop. And what am I gonna do? Am I gonna yell at the dog? That's just now. There's more sounds, even more. But it's just like you got to be able to train your dog that it's okay. Like my dog will go rah rah. And then that's it, because he knows. Except when we leave. When we leave, he's like about 5 minutes of annoying. But even then, because he's like, I can't believe you're not fucking taking me. So I can hear him bitching at us all the way down. And then he watches us leave. And then he's like, fuck this. I'm going to go to the couch.
I had these nightmare neighbors one time that had a dog that I felt so bad for the dog, but it would just bark, like all night. And it's fun. And I finally went online and bought one of these. It looks like a birdhouse, but it's like a sonar thing. So you turn it on, and when the dog barks, it's supposed to shoot out a sound that only they can hear. That kind of default trains the dog. Like, don't bark because they're going to get this noise that sucks. It doesn't really hurt the dog, but it's like
just like okay.
Right. And I put that up and it worked great for the first night. And then I was going to knock on my door. And it was this dude who was not reasonable as a human. Okay. And he was kind of like an affliction shirt. was sentient. Yeah. And so he was like, hey, my kids saw you putting up the camera in the birdhouse spying on me and my wife. I was like, what? No, I didn't. They're like, well, you put a birdhouse, it looks weird. They said there's a camera in it. I'm like, no, see, your dog won't shut the fuck up. And so I bought this thing that and so that just didn't end well. It was basically to the point where it was going to be violent if I didn't just take it down. And so I took it down because I'm on the road a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't want to worry about my house while I'm gone. And so, it just got real bad. So I still have a grudge.
Yeah, that's fair.
Plus silence is important. Mental health wise, I need quiet once in a while. I like being in the city and stuff. It doesn't have to be quiet all the time, but I need a period of time to just hush. So.
Yeah. I just I am envious that I didn't have a childhood with noise canceling headphones for sure.
It was a different time.
Like how people get mad at you shouldn't have free college because I didn't have free college. I'm so genuinely upset that you get to have no sound.
Yeah, but you don't remember the joy of putting cotton in your ears to go see a concert, to go see Huey Lewis in the News and just stuff it full of Easter rabbit cotton.
I did do that, and it wasn't great. It wasn't noise canceling.
It's shit. This isn't good at all. Yeah. So that's a big one.
Yeah. When I was just there at my cousin's house when I was in Spain, their next door neighbor had a dog that constantly barked, but it was because the dog was kept in the apartment 13 hours a day.
It's never the animal's fault.
It's never the animal's fault.
I love dogs.
It's just please, it's just anybody, somebody, please talk to me.
Totally.
Please.
Yes.
Please, just somebody. Is anybody out there? And guess what? When someone's home, the dog doesn't fucking bark at all.
Yeah. Because they need attention or they need training or they need to be crated sometimes. Sometimes they just need a happy place to fucking go. But anyway, I'll be here all day yelling about this. I know.
Now we're barking like those goddamn dogs. We've become the things we hate. So what else? What else are you like?
This one we might disagree on because I feel like we do. Open mics.
Okay.
I know, is that tread territory? Do a lot of people say that, or no comics say that?
You got to be more specific. Just the fact that you don't want people to start doing stand-up anymore.
No, not with that. No, I'm fine with that.
Or you mean a variety open mic? You're gonna have to be more specific.
No, a comedy open mic.
Open mic.
I know it's supposed to be where you work out stuff and everything, but I've never understood the appeal because and I've done them obviously, but whenever I've gone to mics, half the people are nuts, or just whatever, which can be its own entertainment. But it's not, I've never gotten a good judge of material doing that because it's short and I kind of write long form a little bit, but even doing say 5 minutes or whatever, the audience is just comprised of other people looking at their shit waiting to go up. And so it's not
so you're talking about a bad open mic. A bad open mic. So not say, at Acme in Minneapolis where there is a full audience for their open mic.
See, I've never done Acme.
Gotcha.
So I didn't realize that.
There used to be such thing, or Comedy Works. Comedy Works has one that's super there. People go to see there was one in Orlando at Bull and Bush. That people actually go out to see. I feel like when you have an audience.
Wow. That's a big difference then.
Yes.
Maybe it's just experience then because everyone I've done has just been comics waiting to go up.
But most of them are that because most of them are nobody will put these ex-comedians on a show so they quote unquote start an open mic and then so them and their friends can say slurs on stage or you can if one of the reasons I will because yes I will disagree with you on this because one it is a place for the mentally ill to go, so they are not at the shows, real shows.
Okay, fair.
And two, those people oftentimes never leave that level. So it's also a place for people who are bad at stand-up to go.
Okay, yes, I agree with both of those things. But so then what is the appeal to go there and to work out? material.
Like, to say a thing you've never said out loud.
So just to get over that hump, because I do that. Like I've
never been a person who could talk about stand up in a mirror. Like, like
gross.
Jim Carrey used to do all those stuff. That's all that stuff in the mirror. I could never do that. That just seemed too insane for me.
Same. No, I never say the words out loud until I say them on stage. I never like rehearse that.
Same.
But I will work out new premises and stuff in the bulk of a normal like feature set or something.
Sure.
And drop new stuff in for the first time.
Yes.
So I guess I understand that too. Like the verbalization of saying something new for the first time is always
because then when it's clunky and stuff like that,
because you're not used to it.
I'm wasting it on these assholes. Insert, people who, and a lot of times if I can make a room full of comedians laugh, I know that I've gone too far with the joke, so I need to pull it back some.
That's interesting.
Because a lot of times they only want to hear the worst thing you could say imaginable. So then it's like if I'm making a whole group of dudes go. I'm like, okay, I've probably gone too far with this. I probably need to go.
Right. You may have changed my mind a little bit. I'm seeing the value now.
But as I don't like to go to them anymore. Yeah. Now the bar show has become my open mic.
Yeah, so, see, that makes sense.
Yes.
The bar show, because the bar show, at least you have people that it may be a hostage situation where they were unaware comedy was happening.
They wanted to watch hockey.
Yes.
And we're interrupting their hockey.
And guess what? Fuck
dreams.
You.
Yeah.
Turn around and listen to what I have to say.
My dad didn't listen to me, so you have to. Just like my pops. Back to me, huh? I mean, yeah, it's a great.
Totally. Yeah. Competing with a hockey fight is primo.
But I think when you're a young comic, if you don't have that as an option, you do need a place to go. And so a lot of times for me, it's like, I know what I'm going into when I'm going into it. So for me, it's like, if this is a big drawn out concept, because again, I don't physically write.
Right.
So when it's all too jumbled in my head, an open mic is a good place for me to say everything I want to say. And then I can go, once I've said it out loud and I heard myself do it, I go, this part will good, but this will make more sense. So it doesn't really matter.
Okay. That makes sense. Well, that will bridge into another thing.
Okay, let's do it.
Which are comedians that you've been in a conversation with a comic and you realize halfway through the conversation, they're working out material on you a little bit. Have you noticed that?
Where they bit you.
You goddamn sociopath. Like, how dare you hijack? And I know what you're doing and you know what you're doing. You never admit it, but like, you're doing a bit right now. You're doing a premise on me right now.
Yeah.
And that will make me lose someone's phone number real fast.
Don't do work at me.
Oh God!
Don't do work at me without my consent.
How dare you?
Comedy without consent is again. It goes back to the bar show. It's that's
the opposite direction, though.
It's the hostage negotiation where you've put me in this bit situation.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes what I will say, I have placed them, but I always make it known that this is a thing, or I want feedback. I'm curious about this as an idea.
But that's different. That's when you're like, can I pitch this thing to you and like get your.
I was thinking about this thing, and then this is what I had thought about it, and then from that conversation, the bit will come in.
But that's like workshopping. Like that's different. Yes. That's different than being like, so Carmen, I noticed on the way over here, boy, we were talking about liquor stores, and man, wine tops just unscrew now. It was never like that when I remember my mom, like that shit. Yes. And I'm just like, I want to hold your head underwater. Like, I know what you're doing, you fucking monster. So that gets
yes, and that a lot of that is happening at open mics as well.
Oh sure,
there is a lot of that.
There's no legit conversation happening at an open mic at all.
I mean, I feel like that was always a rite of passage when you could there and have a real conversation, because that's the thing I've noticed is once comedians get to a certain level of success, they don't want to workshop because then that's work, or unless it's contextual.
Do you think that's why?
I don't know. No, I think it's because they also once you get past the point of, I know how to do this job, I'm very good at it. Once you get past that point, I feel like then there's the person part of you. The person part of you, I always felt like came after the artist part for me.
Okay.
So I didn't, it took me time to be a real person around other comedians, because for the longest time, I never felt understood by real people. Mm-hmm. So when I was around comics, it was the only time I felt understood. So I always wanted to talk like a comic. And so that was like a learning thing for me, where it was just like, oh, we can just be like, I mean, I've brought this up before. I'll bring it again. When my sister died, I wasn't allowed to be myself until I saw another comedian in person. It was very much that Jerry Seinfeld sees whoever the fuck at the corporate event that they're seeing, where they're like, comedian.
Right.
So there is something to be said where I know I can talk to you like a comedian. I don't have to change. I don't have to mask.
Right.
So to speak. But it's not bits.
Right. Well, right. But that's like being fluent in a second language, right? It's like you speak comic.
Yes.
You can, so you can be fluent and you know that I speak comic.
Yes.
And so we
could also jump in and out and stuff like that. And I think that's also a learned skill, especially people who don't understand the social cues, where a lot of times, like, especially if they're writing on a show or they're.
Are you telling me comedians sometimes don't pick up on social cues? Because I've never experienced that.
It's so funny. It's so easy to write about, but not so easy to act, you know?
I haven't noticed that.
But yeah, I do think there is something to be said in that, like, once your stand-up is all your life work, that sometimes it's nice to just be like, dude, my kid did this cute thing the other day. They're just being a person. It's not a bit. I'm not writing a joke about it. Right. This is something very adorable or very genuine or very wholesome. And a lot of times, I think, especially if people who aren't self-aware enough to be okay with vulnerability, that I think that's why people revert to talking in bits and shit like that. And it is very annoying once you've learned how to do it. It's kind of like watching bad stand-up. Once you know how to do it really well, nails on a chalkboard. Like, I know all this stuff already. I don't want to. Right.
I agree with you. Also, I think my hesitation though about workshopping with comics is different fear. I'm worried that, like, if I'm like, you and I are hanging out and I'm like, Carmen, I have this bit, like, running by you or whatever. I'm worried that, like, if you have a tag or something, that becomes in my head a Carmen bit, because, like, your voice is going to creep in, or your sensibilities are going to, even if we're similar sensibilities.
That sounds like ego to me.
Does it?
Yeah, why would it matter? Because if it resonates with the bit to you, if it's not outside of your voice, then it would make sense. Because I love a tag, and I love hearing a comic do a tag, even if they do it differently. Then I go, I helped. I get very shake and bake about it, where it's like that scratches an ego itch for me, that I got to help build a thing. It's that's
interesting
super cool
too, because, like, it's not,
but I would never think of it that's me, like, my joke. I just feel like I helped something be cool to me.
See, I would take it as like, oh, Carmen made it better, but now it feels like I didn't contribute enough to the bit, and now it's kind of like our bit. I don't know, I'm going too deep with it, but, like, basically,
just say you want to do the bit together, dude. Fuck.
Yeah. Are you open to doing a duo? And
why can't we bring that back? That shit was so big in the 90s.
You know why?
Do you remember that?
I do.
There was the chick from Sister Act that used to do it with another lady. They were super good about it. Now you have to be twins to do a duo.
You do have to be twins.
It's the only way it's acceptable.
That's very Cronenberg Dead Ringers. I never thought of that. That's true.
Why do I have to be like blood related to you?
Yeah,
to be
there
able
are
to
no
have
real
a fun
duos
riff
anymore. You know what you don't see anymore either are those donkey costumes where one is the back half, where the butt flap is hanging out, and the other is the front. I feel like that went those disappeared at the same time as kind of vaudeville duos. At the comedy festival I run, Altercation Comedy Fest, last year, we had Mo Alexander was there, and you know Mo.
I love Mo.
I love Mo too, and Mo and I. Spur of the moment started riffing towards the end of his set, to the point where I got up there and we started trading stories about Prince and Public Enemy and stuff. And it was the most fun for both of us I think we've had in years on stage, because it was just completely nice. And he was like, dude, we should do this again, like as a duo-y thing. So we might try that at some point.
I hope you do.
Like,
I love it.
It was so fun, and just,
I mean, that's what's evolved from that is the live podcast, but I love the idea of two people just on stage without the context of anything just being funny together.
And the crowd almost became secondary because we were trying to make each other laugh. Like Mo and I were talking to each other and the crowd was also there, but it was really fun. Like we ended up, and it was completely unplanned and it just turned into this like
because
20 minutes.
The second you're on stage, you have that pressure, whether you want to, whether you reveal to the audience that you know about it or not, it's still, you're just on.
Yeah.
And I guess that goes back to the thing with the bits. It's like, that was the thing, is like being able to turn it off.
Right. That's a big, Comics who can't turn it off drive me nuts.
Yes.
Like be a human.
Yes. And I think that's what I'm saying is like the bidding people without, doing bits to people without them knowing about it and not being able to turn. Yeah.
Man, I got bit.
he bit me. He bit me right in the middle of dinner.
That dog that won't shut up. No, his owner. He started running shit about me about traffic. Yeah. So those are, what's that, 3? Those are 3 things.
I mean, maybe this is too, we're a part of the reason that I wanted you to come on is because you wrote a book recently.
I did.
You wrote a book and I'm very excited about it. It's called Doing Time and it's comedians talking about comedy, very much like how this last segment kind of was.
Yes.
So it's very on brand for the book itself. Was there anything about, I've never written a book before. A lot of people that are watching and listening have never written a book before. Was there anything about this process that you didn't like without burning a bridge?
The author's note in the beginning of the book, the first thing it says is, I did not want to write this book. That is how I started. And that was absolutely true because I've written 2 other books before this. Those were, one was called The Altercation Archives, which is interviews with rock and roll people like Billy Idol and Joan Jett and folks like that.
Because a lot of people who may not know about you.
Ran a magazine.
You were very much in the music world before you came into the stand-up
very
world.
much. And then my last book was called Killing for a Living, and that came out around 2018. And that was
more memoir-y?
Yeah, that was tour journals. Basically, for like, it started with me leaving the last desk job I ever had in 2014, and covers like 2 full years of like basically jumping off that cliff financially and everything else of trying to be a full-time comic for 2 years. And all the ups and downs and cars on fire and everything else that goes along with that.
What a way to quit, huh?
Shit. Just a lot of
you, boss.
A lot of drama.
Yeah.
And so, but those were more, I mean, the interview book was pretty much straight transcription with intros about how this interview with whoever came about. And then the second book was like journal entries almost. So it's like first person-y, me talking to the reader. This book is like an oral history without really leaning into the history too much. I didn't want to do a history book of stand-up because that's been done so much. Like I didn't want to be like the 80s were crazy and, the Tonight Show and blah, blah, blah. I didn't want to do that.
Because there's so much of that already that exists.
So much, and that's good. There should be, but it's been well tread.
There wasn't anything really, as far as, so much time has passed since the 80s, but everybody always goes back to the 80s. There's not a lot that's being done. I mean, there was very little about the indie scene. I mean, like the Janine Garofalo and the Comedians of Comedy years.
And that's what this book aims to be. I didn't want to throw alt on the title at all because that's too alienating. And also I'm sure you experience this too, but when you are immersed in comedy so much, at a certain point, people that like stand-up but aren't as immersed in us don't know what you're talking about when you start talking about like the alt scene and the early Largo and stuff like that. That is second nature for us to know because we're fluent.
Yeah.
But people go like, I don't know what you're talking about right now. Like, I like Mr. Show. Does that count? Like, yes. But also like they anyway, this was intended to cover early 90s to today. Pretty much as far as scope. And I wanted just to have comics speak in their own words. And so basically, I had read other oral history books. Please Kill Me is a big one. That's like a punk rock one about CBGBs in the 70s and stuff. And
so you kind of took that influence from that and applied it to this.
I just had this epiphany of like, no one's done a comedy one, an oral history really, where a big gripe I have with things I don't like, biographies of people is that oftentimes the author will insert themselves into it. And I'm like, motherfucker, I don't care about you.
Yeah. That's,
like the first time I met, Tom Waits, I was at the,
you want to talk about something I don't like. I love by that, I mean, I hate whenever someone dies and then everyone inserts themselves.
Oh, totally.
That's a big thing.
Totally.
Where it's just like, okay, I appreciate that you had an experience with this person, but why not instead you telling me about you? Why don't you tell me what that person did for you, or the inspiration? Like, talk about them, not you.
Right.
This isn't happening to you. You didn't
not
die.
Yet. The day is young. Shut your dog up.
Exactly.
So, but I, for better for worse, it was like 2021, I think, where I was, COVID was still happening, touring was still minimal. And I was like, there's no oral history of stand-up. And then I was like, God damn it. Like, cause I
guess gonna have to do it.
Well, I realized that we needed to be written by a comic. To ask the right questions and kind of give that insider.
That was one of the things that I appreciated about it, is that it was written by a comic. Right. So they already know. So now you're not going to get an interview answer from a comedian. You're going to get a comedian answer to a
That's what
comedian.
I wanted. I wanted peer-to-peer stuff. And also I wanted to keep myself completely out of it. So you'll see none of me in there aside from the author's intro. Because I wanted to do it as like a well-informed archivist is how I kind of approached it. And I knew from doing the job for 15 years that, I had access to a lot of, I didn't want to go through, even during COVID, when more people were home and looking for stuff to do, I didn't want to go through the hoops of channels of like, this publicist needs to clear it with this assistant who needs to clear it with this. I said, you know what, let me just look through my phone. And that's another thing in the intro that I talk about. I said, thank you to the comics who appear in the book for giving me the most precious currency in stand-up comedy, which is your cell phone number.
Yeah, that's true.
Because that is a huge trust thing, right? That is, and God help you if you fuck that up and give it away to somebody else.
Yes.
But it's like precious currency. And I was determined not to, in any way, trifle with that. Like I didn't want to abuse that privilege. And also though, I knew that I could easily message all these people that were pros and names, and some are very working class. Some are, you talk about being middle class all the time with comedy. I feel the same way myself. And there's a lot of people we know, Brandy Posey, I'm trying to think of someone who's a blue collar road dog like us that's in a similar way. Madelana Martin, people like that are just Josh McClain, Jay Chenoyne, people that are very good at stand up that just aren't famous, right? That aren't doing arenas and shit like that. But they've got record deals and they work with pros and they do the job more or less full time,
right?
And that was what was important to me. They needed to be kind of a career comic, even if they had other jobs to supplement income. But I realized, I'm like, I have like 50 people I could talk to. I pick up the phone today and say, hey, can I talk to you for this thing for an hour? And so I just did that. I just started doing it. I was like, I didn't have a book deal in place. I had shopped Killing for a Living a bit and got some positive response, but I ended up just putting it out myself because I had the channels to do that from my other book and from being in the publishing world a little bit. I could get it into Barnes and Noble on my own and stuff. So I said, I'm a DIY guy. I'll just do it. And it did okay. But this one, I was like, if I need to do it, I want real distro. I want a real publisher to put it out. But I just started interviewing people without holding myself to the fire of like, I have to write this book. And I just started seeing the more I interviewed people, I'm like, all right, this needs to do it. This needs to happen now.
Yeah.
Because I would sit down with folks.
Now
and
you
be
have
like,
all the content and you're like, oh, and this is building into something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you probably get it too. There's a lot of interest in what the job actually is. People are fascinated and terrified by stand-up.
That's why we get tired of getting asked the same questions.
Yes. And how do you do that?
Yes.
What are your inspirations? How do you come up with your ideas? It's like, but it's terrifying to people to get up on stage. I do these shows sometimes called Altercation Road Stories, where it's not comedians. I'll host it and it's all stories and I'll have musicians, from famous bands and stuff like that. And they're terrified a lot of the time. These people can get up in front of thousands of people, play their ass off on guitar,
But they have a friend up there with them or a guitar. There's
but
other
they'll be
things.
visibly shaking backstage, getting ready to go out and tell a story about touring Europe for 10 minutes. And so there's a lot of, I think, intrigue on the part of the average comedy fan about what the job really entails.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff people won't talk about, like the loneliness of touring, the trepidation I had, and I think a lot of comics have, of when you do leave that last desk job of like, is this thing that I love so much now has to pay my rent? Am I going to start to resent it and loathe it because, am I going to ruin the thing that I like so much? Because I have to depend on it in that way.
I mean, yeah, for sure. Because my mom she would qualify for a chef if she had ever fucking put herself in it. But it was one of those things that it was always like, she hosts these very like elaborate parties that have all this, and people are always like, why don't you start a catering company or public? And she was just like, no, I don't want to. Then I have to do it. And I want to do it when I want to do it. And so I think there is something to be said about that. And there is a nervousness that happens when it was like, but for me personally, that never even crossed my goddamn mind.
Really?
I wanted to do it so much. I didn't give a fuck.
Yeah. I know that about you. Like, you get antsy if you're not on stage after a few days.
Yes.
I don't. I never feel that way. I'm always happy to go on tour.
When I was in Spain, I had to find a fucking set.
See, never. I would never. Never. I would order more tapas and stick my feet in the sand. This would be the last thing I'd want to do. But I know that about you. Like you've been at my house for a few days when we've been doing shows and
I'm
stuff.
Like, all right,
and you're like, you want to go hit a mic? I'm like, absolutely not.
You're out of your mind. We're like, we're having a good time. Why would you want to ruin that?
No.
Like, come on, there's got to be some place that'll let us get.
Yeah. So I've never had that. I'm very happy to when I'm off the road to not do comedy, but I feel a lot of people also, the perception is you're either Jerry Seinfeld or you don't do it for real in their head. Like you can't just be a working class comic.
Yeah.
And increasingly that's difficult, but I think the perception of a lot of the swath of people who do real jobs, it's very confusing to them. And like, when I left my last day job and said I'm going to be a full-time stand-up comic, it was like announcing I was going to be a superhero.
Yes.
Like, I'm going to go be an astronaut. Bye. Or, it's very strange.
They're like, wait, what?
So the more I talked to comics and peers, the more I was like, this is really revealing, not in a expose way, not in like the shocking truth or any shit like that, but in a really nuts and bolts way of like what it means to do this job and the pluses and the minuses and all that stuff. And so I started forming in my head. I was like, okay, I can see. I wanted it in 3 sections. I wanted like an airplane ride, the takeoff, introductions of childhood and stuff like that. Then the bulk of the ride is going to be about the life, about doing the job and what that means. And then the end, which I call check drop in the book, is just kind of like things you've learned, people who quit during COVID that don't want to do it anymore, people who play theaters now that are like, how do you stay grounded in that mode? And like just stuff like that, advice. And so that's what, once the book took shape in my head, I was like, now I have to do it. And I also knew it was going to be a big book, because I wanted it to be fully fledged out.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's what this is. It's out on Jawbone Press, which is a publisher out of London, which was badass. I'm excited about that. Yeah. They do beautiful books about.
They read in London.
They read in London. They do read. They read in London. They're big readers. Turns out they know what a tariff is in London. They're readers. And I had, what it was, I've been on several labels without representation and brokered those deals myself, because I'm very much I don't want to go too much into industry shit, but like I have a degree of untrust when it comes to industry people.
Oh, and sure. So I wonder why that is.
I know, it's strange.
Has it been just so many people have been fucked out of their own money for their own creations?
La 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 la. So I've always, and talking about coming from a place of ego, I always thought, to me, I'm such a strong-headed fucker and DIY that I was like, to have a manager would just be an ego stroke for me saying, I have a manager. And I'm like, that's stupid. I'm going to give somebody percentage, because I've been approached by people in that regard. And I've always said no, because it seems unnecessary.
Right.
And the only reason I would have one is to say, oh, you might put it on your website. It looks cool. Talk to them. But doesn't mean they're doing anything for you. Anyway.
I think to your point, I think it's you can't have my phone number anymore.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
You have to talk to another person.
Exactly
before you talk
right.
To me.
Exactly correct. And that's how you know a real one too, when they don't pull that shit.
Yeah.
When you have a Dana Gould or a Patton Oswalt that's like, take my note, or you know, and so, but I, you know, the point of that being, I have brokered stand-up specials and stuff on my own and worked with labels because, you know, a lot of young comics say like, how'd you get to sign to so-and-so label? Because I can't find any information on their website. I'm like, you absolutely will never find information.
Yeah, why would they have that information?
Absolutely not. And I'm not going to tell you how.
Yeah.
But brokering a book without an agent was the hardest thing I have ever done.
Oh, really?
In terms of
so in the literary world, if you don't have an agent, you're not valid.
You can't get in.
Gotcha.
You cannot get in those doors. They won't look at it. It doesn't matter. You could have written the great American novel. You could have, if you don't have a literary agent, you cannot get in. And so me being me, I said, well, I'm going to get in anyway, which may be ego. I think of it as determination because I knew once the book was done, I'm like, I knew this is good. I know it's something, again, I tried to keep me out of it. So I'm like, people may know me and may have read my other books and may know me from stand-up or whatever, as a recognizable brand in some extent, but the story of comedians speaking about comedy is bigger than any fan base that I may have. And so people could not have heard of me ever, but still be intrigued about the book because the book is what I want people to sell. I'm not selling me, I'm selling the book.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I had some great meetings. My buddy Mishka Shubali, who's a great musician and author, had introduced me to some people, and they had done books by Posehn and Stanhope and stuff, and they were great. And then I'd been talking to them for like 8 to 10 weeks, and it seemed like I've got a book deal here. It's going to work out. And then one day they walked in and their staff got cut by 80%.
Oh shit.
And they got reassigned to a more corporate area of publishing.
Oh, no.
And suddenly their hands were completely tied and it just went away overnight. And I was like, what the fuck am I going to do? Like, I, you know, like this was the spot. This was going to get me in airports. Like this was the place. And the guy got it. And I was so crestfallen and almost was like, fuck it, I'll just put it up myself. But then I was like, no, I had, you know, some people close to me.
Be patient.
Be like, calm down.
Readjust.
But I was so like, fuck it. You know, I'm just going to do it, you know? And, but then I was like, because you can't just call up Penguin, you know, you can't do that. And so I said, well, all right, well, what I'm going to do as a plan B after I'd calmed down after a few weeks of just like, God damn it, what now? Was I'm a voracious reader. So I went on my bookshelves and I went through all the books that were either oral history leaning or topical in a way that I was like, this could aesthetically be a good fit. And 3 different places off my bookshelves popped out. And one was Jawbone. Jawbone. I work sometimes with this brilliant spoken word artist, Lydia Lunch, who's like, you know, legendary punk rock icon. And she had done, there was a movie done on her called The War Is Never Over. And they did an oral history accompaniment to that. And it was on Jawbone. And I was like, this book looks beautiful. I like that it's printed in London. And so I started checking them out. And their catalog was really cool.
Yeah.
They had done books by books about Lou Reed.
Because I feel like that's when it also comes down to is this publishing company, do they fuck with the kind of shit that I'm trying to, like, if they have to, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Chicken Soup for the Soul isn't going to fucking put out this book. You know
that's where the guy who was interested originally got pushed to that type of shit.
Oh my God.
He was like, I'm just going to send you the website. And I was like, oh my God. I'm looking at the photos of the staff and everything on there. And I'm just like, this is not a good fit anymore.
Real estate agents.
Yes. 1000% correct. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And I was like, my poor friend, like you got to be in the salt mines of literature. Fortunately, now they gave him back in his imprint, like they resurrected it on a smaller scale. So he's back in his happy place, which is great.
Oh, that's nice.
But I sent it to 3 places and Jawbone was one. And the other 2 places, all of them said yes, which shocked me. The other 2 places that I hit up also said yes, but they wanted things like distinct chapters. So assembling the oral history was really difficult too, because you basically, you know, I transcribed everything, broke it down into the quotes that I wanted, that I thought were relative to the book, and then put it together like a giant mixtape of like 50 different comics, all to
you
tell
are
a
so of
linear story.
your era, dude. This is so
totally. It's totally
so
zine culture
brand.
shit.
Yes.
It absolutely is. But it took so much time,
of course,
to do the distinct narrative of like, I wanted to tell the story without writing, and then we went to the open mic, you know? And so it was really difficult and very intentional. Like, I want this to go to this, to go to this, to go to this. And then you rearrange it a little bit, but like I had a very and it was all in my head. I didn't have bar graphs saying this goes, I just did it. And so when the book was done, and I was very happy with it, and I started sending it to people, they were like, well, we really like it and we'd like to buy it, but could you break it down into chapters? Like maybe you have everybody talking about hecklers, and then maybe you have everybody talking about late night. And I was like, well, that naturally happens in the book through the conversation. Like that's, they're like, yeah, but people are lazy and we want them to be able to look and just go to page 19 hecklers and then read all about hecklers. I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, but we're like, this is not for a lazy reader.
They wanted me to dumb it down.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I was like, I refuse.
Yeah.
I'll put it out myself before I dumb it down.
That's like same like wanting, I mean, that's great, like wanting the Grateful Dead, but just the studio version, the studio album. Yeah. It's like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, they just want Scarlet Begonias over and over again. And so look at us knowing the Grateful Dead. Holy shit. Woo! And so I said no. Because both the first two publishers kind of wanted some changes in that regard. They basically wanted me to dumb it down a little bit to make it more sellable. And I was like, and they were shocked. Like they could not believe
that you
that
said
an
no
unrepped author that was basically cold calling them.
Yeah.
Said no to a book deal because it's so hard to even get in.
Yeah.
And they were like, one got offended. One just stopped, like immediately stopped responding to any of my stuff. And I was like, I don't think it's going to work out. Like, no, like, okay, well, thanks for your time and good luck.
Gotcha.
Just completely like, bam. And this lady was just aghast that I would say no. And this other guy was fairly cool about it, but I could tell he was like, what?
Yeah.
You know, I was like, no,
wild.
No, it's wild. And so Jawbone hit me back with, well, tell me more about the book. And so I sent them, because I had sent like the first 40 pages or whatever to everybody. And so Jawbone, I sent them the full manuscript. And said, you know, this is pretty much it.
This is the concept. This is the whole thing.
This is the thing. And they read it and they said, would you be open to, because it was 3 chapters and the middle it's 155,000 words. When I laid it out, it was well over 500 pages. They said, would you be open to, because it was just first section, second section, third section. And the center section was like 200 straight pages of text. They said, would you be open to putting headers occasionally, just when I do start talking about depression or start talking about first times getting up,
right? Where
it just gives someone in their delightful English way, they said a chance to put a pot of tea on the kettle and then come back to their spot. And I was like, that makes perfect sense to me. That's not reorganizing the book in a way that I'm uncomfortable with. That's not making it feel lazy. That's just giving like a placeholder and a little bit of a heads up about what
like
I'm getting into
bookmark.
Exactly that. And I was like, totally fine with that. That is the only change they asked for. And I think it made the book better. I think it was the right thing to do. And then they made me a very fair offer and that was it. Done. Hooray.
So the parts you didn't like were having the rug pulled out from under you once you thought the book deal was done. 1.
That was rough.
And then 2, people telling you needed to change the book for dumb people.
Right. And that's not right. And not people, I should also say, not editorial suggestions. Like because that again comes to an ego thing, right? Of like, well, nobody could tell me how to my vision, blah, blah, blah. I was open to suggestions about like the guy that I've been talking to for multiple weeks that eventually it fell apart out of his hands. I really respected his opinion in the books that he had done. And so I was like, please give me feedback on this, you know? But to dumb it down.
Yeah.
No.
That's just not it kind of goes against the
That's not getting it right. That's selling out to me. That's like making it more palatable to a broader audience instead of doing the right book for the audience that gets it.
Yes. Yeah, it's a book for people who already like stand up.
Yeah, and people, but also that like aren't necessarily as encyclopedia about it as we are. You know, people that be like, I do like stand up. I've been to stand up a few times. I like, whoever, Tom Segura or whoever, mainstream person they know. But I think that, hopefully if I did my job right, they get a sense of what it's really like to do this for a living at all the different levels.
Right. Another thing that's cool about it is you said that I'm in this book, and because I don't remember anything. That's the cool thing about having a neurodivergent brain. I get to learn about what I contributed to this after I've already.
Well, what's hilarious because I know stand-up comics so well. I know we have the memory of a goldfish a lot of the time. I have a very strong memory, which I know is a weird thing. You just brought it up
more than once. You're like, you're in this book. You're in this book. And I was like, I don't even remember what the fuck I said to you.
No one does. No one does, because it was most of the time. Because I mean, it was literally the interviews I did them. Those were the first things I did. And so the interviews were done like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And, I tried to sit down with people as much as I could. A lot of them were on the phone too. I can tell you from my weird trap jaw brain that I can remember exactly where I interviewed everyone and what you and I, it was post show Creek in the Cave, and you had just come off stage and we were both a little tipsy, and I cornered you outside.
Oh man, that's where you get unbridled.
Yeah, but also so that's what's funny is I've had multiple people who are in the book say, "What book?" And like, I don't expect them to remember, but I also kept it under wraps. I was very quiet working on this book. I didn't even tell people I was writing a new book because I was worried that because the oral history of comedy hadn't been done yet and comedy's so hot, I could see someone taking the idea and putting out a shitty AI written version overnight.
Yes.
Like I was really, because I've heard enough horror stories from high profile friends about how their ideas have gotten stolen in Hollywood and stuff like that. Like I know that happens. And it's hard to prove once the idea, no one owns an idea, but I was really determined to do it right and keep it super quiet. And so I would interview people and say, this is for a book project I'm working on. And that was that. But it's not surprising to me now that people like, I am.
I'm
and also the number one question is, oh shit, what did I say? That's the worry. I texted with Joe Sib and DeRosa recently, and both of them were like, oh, badass. That looks great. I'm in it? Huh. Well, cool. But I, as a comic and someone that has done press, you've done press where they get it wrong.
Of course.
And then you're like, ah, no.
Yeah.
And so I was the book is very warts and all. I didn't want to have it sanitized because nobody wants to read that. Nobody wants the happy-go-lucky version of it.
Yeah.
But there's no one in that book, because they're all peers, if not friends. I wouldn't say everyone in there is a friend, but they're all peers that I've worked with on occasion. Cohorts is a good way to put it. I wanted none of my cohorts who were generous enough to be in the book painted in a bad light.
Of course.
So there's no shit talking about other people. There's no people talking about this comic sucks or this guy's a hack or anything like that. There's comics talking about how much it hurt to be dragged by some other popular podcast.
Right.
Like, there's talk about mental health and stuff like that, which is very revealing. Like some people really talk about manic episodes they've had and just, the frailty of, eating disorders and stuff, mutual friends we have talk about stuff. So people are very unguarded, but I didn't want anyone, there's nothing I think in that book where someone like you would be like, oh shit.
I can't believe you put that in there.
I can't believe you put that in there and I'm going to be in hot water. There's none of that because I don't want to, that's sensationalism and that's shitty.
Yeah.
But maybe it sells books. Maybe,
probably
flaring up drama could sell book because people will go, oh, you got to hear about Carmen said this about this venue or this person steals jokes supposedly or whatever. I didn't want any of that shit in there. People get that access to that enough on social media. I wanted this to be brutally honest, but in a way that's just like anything that you would read in there. It's coming from a place of like, yeah, that made me be a little uncomfortable that I admitted that because I felt open enough to say I struggle with this or this, but not like paint you in a shitty way where you're like, I wish I hadn't said that.
And especially when you like to curate your vulnerability a lot of times, so it would make you uncomfortable. Yeah, I get that. I think that's good. I think that's what makes it good for people who know how to read, like to read.
Right.
Because they're not looking for clickbait books.
No, exactly. That's exactly the right term. Yeah. Is that a lot of things that sell right now are clickbait books. And this is not that. This is an immersion. And it's a commitment. Like if you want to read it, it's a big book. I think it reads fast. I think hopefully if you read it, you're going to want to keep finishing it.
Yeah.
But it's not like watching somebody special or watching a documentary on stand-up or listening to even a multi-series podcast or something.
Down the line, maybe Doing Time ends up becoming a docu-series.
People are already asking me about the audiobook and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, the amount of rights and clearances and nonsense I would have to go through is insurmountable in my brain. Because I'm also not reading this whole fucking book and doing everyone's voice, which that would be the most unhinged thing I could do. Because it's everyone's voice, it's everyone's literally speaking in quotes.
Yeah.
But there's nothing in there.
So you're getting people's unbridled personalities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you have people like Kids in the Hall in there, and there's a lot of revealing stuff about, their childhoods and just the neurosis that stand-up can breed.
Oh yeah, or feed into, or a lot of times it's also it ends up being a coping mechenism for
sure
a lot of other kinds of mental illness for sure. So it's well, that's cool. That's also getting you're getting a unique view into the mind of.
Right. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
Was to do that and to document it and also make it a degree evergreen in that, there's some stuff there mentions COVID in there a little bit because that was such a restart for a lot of people. And some people quit, some people didn't want to do it anymore.
Right.
And some people had pilots that were ready to go and then they fell apart. Some people were recording in April 2020. 800-pound gorilla records in a fall. But like that was important to touch upon, but it's not like a whole large overbearing thing.
Right. Well, there is always, what is it? The acts of God or whatever they call it. There is always those things which nobody ever talks about that could affect everything. That could have been the upper, that could have been the pinnacle of everything.
Yeah.
And then, if there was no jawbone, so to speak, if that rug being pulled out could have been the end of all of it.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if jawbone, because I had already said no to the two others.
Yeah.
So it's not like you go back. I can't do that. If jawbone, and I don't want to put all the pressure on them. Like I said, I'm a bit of a determined dude when it comes to something that I think needs to be done right. I will go extra. I was just very happy it worked out because I was like, it felt right on a lot of levels. Aesthetically, they got it. They didn't want changes. The fact that, and this may be my own perception, but again, as a reader, that they were a London-based publisher, I feel like they have a higher degree of standard as far as literature versus clickbaity books. Like, I don't feel like there's a lot of clickbaity books coming out of England. I don't know. I could be wrong with that. I'm sure they have a certain degree of them, but like they just feel a little more literary. Trash,
but yeah.
You know what I'm saying? As opposed to American publisher. Maybe that's unfair, but I just felt that. The biggest hurdle, which ended up not being a hurdle, was they had never done a non-music book.
Oh, okay.
They've been around for 20 plus years and all of their books were Bob Dylan or, Johnny Thunders or, I think they did a big one on Johnny Cash. Gorgeous books. I love the aesthetic of them all. They looked and felt great, but they had never done a non-music book. And so their worry was maybe we don't know how to market you because you're not
music,
a guitar. You're not Jack White. And I said, that's true. But fortunately / unfortunately, depend on who you ask. I come from a music background and I've toured with a lot of bands and I kind of have that punk rock IMDb aspect that follows me around for good or for ill.
Yeah.
Pluses and minuses there. But I said, I might be an easier sell to publicity outlets given my history than just a stand-up comedian.
Right.
Because like I've toured with the Riverboat Gamblers and Off of Their Heads and The Sword and stuff like that. And so there's, if you're pitching to music outlets, there's an angle there.
Yeah.
And so they were like, oh, awesome. Hooray.
Okay,
done.
cool.
And done. And done.
We didn't know how to do this, and you just answered our question. Thank you.
They've been so amazing to work with. They've been so on top of everything. I got an advance for the first time in my life.
Wow.
Which showed up 2 days after they said just invoice us, which was like a big proving ground also. So because the other thing with writing a book, you do all the work, but typically if you're Stephen King or whatever, you get an advance and you live all that while you write the book.
Yeah.
I just wrote this in my spare time when I wasn't on the road. And so at the end of the day, there's no guarantee anybody's paying you for all those hours of work.
Yeah.
I could sell it myself and make back whatever, but like there was no carrot at the end of the stick necessarily. So it was a relief that, and I just want it in stores.
Yeah.
That's the long of that story. I just want people to be able to find it.
Yeah.
And I can't do that on my end.
Without having to fucking get an ebook on Amazon or whatever the fuck.
And also when I'm on the road, I often go to bookstores.
Same.
And so whenever I was in a bookstore, I said one of these things, when I started working with them, I said, can you get Jawbone stuff? And every place I went said, yeah. I said, well, that's all I need to know. And so it was.
That's also you're gonna get a cool bookstore, like you're gonna get a Book Soup, or you're gonna get a the last bookstore on earth. So you're gonna get those places that like
Book People in Austin. Like I wanted the indie places where people would go to the humor section and stumble across this and go, oh shit. That's all I want.
Yeah.
That's all I want. And so I want people to read it now. And so it was supposed to be out late May. And then some guy fucked up our economy with tariffs and stuff. And because it's being printed in England, it has to come over here by boat because it's real heavy to the US distribution points. Anyway, long story short, it now is pushed until July 8th. Gotcha. Is the official in-store release. But that's a firm out in stores then.
That's exciting. So July 8th. You could buy Doing Time.
Yes, but you can pre-order it right now at jawbonepress.com or doingtimecomedy.com. If you want a signed copy, I have signed copies up there that'll ship maybe a little earlier because I get my copies. These are just they overnighted me like 15 copies. So that's yours.
Oh shit. This is exciting.
Yeah. And
so you can't even get this.
You can't get we're at an undisclosed location.
You'll never find me.
And we're both scrappy. So don't just comedians getting day mugged.
Yeah. So Doing Time, Comedians Talk Stand-Up Comedy, JT Habersaat is a forward by mutual friend Eddie Pepitone.
Eddie Pepitone, my buddy, my constant tour mate.
And you got great past guests that we've had. You get Jackie Cation, and then there's also, there's a lot of you got some crazy gets in here too. Dana Gould, Patton Oswalt, Brian Posehn. Like these are people who like stand-up comedy are gonna know who a lot of these people are. And then if you don't know who these people are, it's also a great source for you to find people that you're like, oh shit,
right?
I like how this person thinks. I wonder how their stand-up is.
Yeah, well, I'm not naive. And as a comedy fan myself, I knew that I needed certain degree of names for people to be like, oh, this is legitimate. And also, I want to hear from those people. You know, like I work with Posehn quite a bit, but we don't really sit down and talk about our origin stories. You know, like, it's just not something you do when you're on the road with somebody. Yeah,
so we're talking about where we can get a really good sandwich.
Totally.
In San Antonio.
Yes.
That's what we're talking
What is
about.
open after 11? That is, exactly right. And so I wanted to know these stories from friends. I wanted to sit down and hear Tom Rhodes talk about how Bill Hicks was one of the first people he worked with and how Bill would then vouch for him when he was in New York at Catch a Rising Star.
Oh, shit. That's crazy.
I didn't know that stuff.
Yeah.
I want to, hear about Jackie Cation talking about
Sam Kinison.
Heckling Sam Kinison when she's 19, which if you know Jackie, in my head, that's such an amazing scene to play out. I love that picture so much. 19-year-old college Jackie yelling at Sam Kinison is the funniest thing in the world to me.
It's pretty adorable.
So, Bobcat Goldthwait talking about setting the Tonight Show on fire. Things are in there that will appear notable to people that know, air quotes, famous people. But also I would say 40% of the comics in there are just working class comics that you may not know, but their stories are just as valid. And the goal is by the end to kind of like have a Kristen Leidy who's so great and works so hard at doing the job for real. In your mind, I hope by the end of the book, she's up there the same level of like, I feel like I know this person as a Maria Bamford or, you know, and so that was also very intentional. I didn't want it star fuckery. I didn't want people's names blasted all over it in terms of a gross way. Cause that would feel, you know, I know, you know, I don't like asking my friends for anything. And so I certainly didn't want it to appear gross, you know, in terms of like throwing big splashy names on stuff, but also you got to sell the book. You know, people need to have a point of reference of, oh, this is real. This is legitimate.
Yeah.
So hopefully that was the end result.
Yeah, this is the sweet spot in between those.
So now I'm you're the first person I've given it to aside from Eddie.
Oh,
it arrived yesterday.
I'm excited.
And so today I go around like some sort of weird Krampus delivering copies to Henry Phillips and Jackie Cation and Avery Moore and Greg Turkington. So I'm going around today just dropping off Easter eggs. And then I sit like this for the next 2 weeks until I start to get feedback from you fuckers reading it and hope that you like it. So that's where I'm at now.
That's fun. That's exciting to not be worried about the audience. It's more important if your friends like it.
Oh, I just want my friends to like, not from please like me, but I want my friends to say, okay, you got it right.
Yes. No, I get it.
Because I'll feel awful if it's like,
yeah. What the fuck is it?
But dude, you know, like, that would kill me because I was really determined to get it accurate. So we'll see. So I'm going to sit here while you read the book.
Okay. I'm going to read all 500 pages.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot, but so
jawbone.com.
Jawbonepress.com.
Jawbonepress.com to pre-order it.
Yeah, or doingtimecomedy.com.
Or Doing Time Comedy.
Signed copies and stuff. But yeah.
Very nice. Yeah. And then if you want to wait, it comes out July 8th.
If you want to wait. You have no choice but to wait. So how it works is my author copies get shipped to me a little earlier. So if you buy it from me, like a signed copy.
Oh, so definitely go to
doingtimecomedy.com has a link to that. And those will probably ship, I'm hoping June, early June, beginning of June, end of May, maybe if we get real lucky. Because again, it's coming by boat and I have to wait for it to get here. It's very Nosferatu. You have to wait for the Dracula to get here. You have to have the villagers carry the grave dirt to the distribution points. Then they have to send it to me. So it's but yeah, that's the best place. Either jawbonepress.com or doing.
Well, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to read it.
Thanks. I hope you like it.
I probably will. I'm a comic nerd, so
that's it. It's for comic nerds.
Yeah.
For comic nerds by a comic nerd.
Anything else you want to plug before we go?
Not really. I mean, jtcomedy.com has all my dates. You know, I'm out
traveling with
our friend.
Our friend Eddie Pepitone as well.
Yeah, Eddie Pepitone and I. EddiePepitone.com has all of the ticket links and stuff. We have shows coming up in June and August and October. And Brian Posehn and I work quite a lot together too when we can. He's doing some stuff in Canada, I think, up soon, and some other projects. So I don't think I'm going to Canada, but not that because I might stay there. I may not. I may claim some sort of sovereignty and just build a fort out of weed and not leave.
Yeah.
So, but those are the guys that I'm usually on the road with. More
JTcomedy.com.
JTcomedy.com.
I'll have everything listed like there. And then again, doingtimecomedy.com for you to get your issue of this book, which I'm stoked to read. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I know. I appreciate you being a curmudgeon with me.
It's always fun. You change my mind about some stuff. That's impressive. That's hard to do. I've softened a little bit on the open mic thing. Yeah.
It's just good, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah.
It's like the asylums that Ronald Reagan shut all down. There's no place for them to go.
Yeah, there's just going to be a bus that pulls up and they ship them to upstate New York like they did back in the 80s. True story.
And now it's just coffee shops.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, the Gilded Loon.
Thank you guys so much for listening. I do adore you. Patreon.com/NoSirPod if you want to throw money at the podcast. Just keeps this going. CarmenMorales.com for all of your Carmen Morales needs. It's got all the list. I got some new dates coming up there. I'm going to Reno. No, not Reno. Really? Tahoe. I'm going to Tahoe, which is close to Reno. So going to Tahoe and going to a few other places I forgot at this very moment in classic ADHD fashion. But thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
No, sir, I don't like it.